Hello dear friends, welcome once again at Lit E-City, the YouTube channel of your choice. And in today's topic, we are going to discuss a very interesting, a very important European writer, Italo Calvino. Dear friends, Italo Calvino is a name who is associated with the postmodern rise of the novel. His novels, his stories, his essays, all are very radically path breaking and different from the traditional structures and we can say technique of novel writing. And he has gained, we can say, lot of followers and critical acclaim with his very, you can say, novelistic approach towards writing novel. So let's start this topic. Basic information about him: Italo Calvino. Today he is globally acclaimed as one of the most original and adventurous in the sense of technique voices in the history of 20th century European literature. His whimsical and imaginative fables, he reconceptualized a wide range of narrative genres, whether it is science fiction, whether it is political satire, romance, the epic, the folk tale, the fairy tale, the autobiographical memoir, the travelogue, and the detective story. He has basically tried to rewrite the rules which govern these particular genres. He has presented them in a totally new non-conformist format. Calvino was actually born in Cuba, and where his both parents, who were scientists, they were posted, and later his parents decided to move the family to San Ramo in Italy, and Calvino remained throughout his childhood and adolescence as this at this particular place. Then Calvino's first novel, which was written at very young age of only 22, and the name of the work was The Path to the Nest of Spiders, written in Italian. It follows the typical codes and convention of social realism, which was quite prevalent during this period of 1947. So in his first novel, he basically followed the trodden path. He write what was the fashion, what was the vogue of that time. This is his first novel, The Path to the Spider's Nest. Later, in the post-war period, after the end of Second World War, the Italian literary world was deeply committed to politics. Not only Italian, we know that whole continental literature and politics was intermingled, and there was a very effective stamp of communist policies on the literary scene of the world. Turin, where he was staying, which was the industrial capital, it was a focal point, or we can say a merger point of these two things. Calvino joined the Italian Communist Party and even reported on the Fiat Company for the party's daily newspaper. His political interests eventually led him to Soviet Union, where he stayed for a long time and gathered reports on communist life through his travels of the countries. These travels, we can say experience, have basically given him an insight into the life of common man and has influenced his earlier writings also. Eventually, he resigned from the party in 1956 when Hungary was invaded by the Soviet Union. In fact, this one political event has led to the disillusionment to many committed communists, and they have eventually left the party. Over the next course of next 9 years, the decade of 60s, 1951 to 1959, he published three modern folk tales. Now they are basically reworking of traditional folk tales: the Clone Viscount, the Baron in the Trees, and the Non-Existent Knight. And these basically tales, they are considered a significant departure from his earlier socio-realistic fiction basically were printed separately first. They all were printed in different years separately, but later collected in 1960 and issued as a trilogy, a 3-volume set, and the title was Our Ancestors. This collection, these 3 tales are, we can say, his introduction to the postmodernism. He changed his technique, he changed his storytelling technique, and Our Ancestor collection of these 3 tales, we can say, the modern Italo Calvino was born. Now, with a new orientation to his writing, Calvino continued to move from traditional framework towards a more experimental one. He continued to experiment with the novel form, and his most ambitious fiction, it was published in the final 2 decades of his career. Some of his important work during this period are like Cosmic Comics, which was a series of narratives and depicting the evolution of universe. So it was written in rather we can say a scientific journal, but it was once again turned upside down. The Castle of Crossed Destiny, it was originally written to accompany a collection of tarot cards. So you can understand once again an experiment with the genre. If on a winter's night a traveler, his most recognized work which catapulted him to international recognition, still this is one of his most read after and discussed after work. Mr. Palomar, which is considered to be his finest work, was at press at the time of his death. So these were some of his we can say important works, and now we will discuss some of these works in brief detail. For example, let's first take The Clown Viscount. It was published in a series of books by new writers, and the series was called Tokens, and it was a departure from the more realistic style of his first novel. Now, what is the story? It is a story, it is basically narrated by a boy. A young boy narrates the story. It is narrated by a young boy who is basically nephew of this particular Viscount. A Viscount, he takes part in a war, and he comes in front of a cannonade, and he is spliced into 2 halves. Now the doctor somehow stitches one part, and one half returns to home. Everyone welcomes him, but he shows unmatched cruelty towards everyone. His grandmother Sebastina, the name is Sebastina, and she realizes that the evil half has returned. Now the shocking thing happens when the other half also returns to the hometown. They both start, the good one and the bad one, they both start working in complete contrasting manner. They both fall in love with one same girl, a peasant girl, and they decide to have a duel to set the goal, or to decide who will take her hand in marriage. And while they are fighting with each other and they are mortally hurting each other, the local surgeon, he interferes and stitches 2 bodies together miraculously. Again they become one and marry the girl. So basically it's we can say a kind of allegory of good and evil together in one single being. It is a very traditional, we can say, allegory. We find it in many Indian, many Grecian and even Middle East folk tales. Italo Calvino has treated it in rather a unique manner by very graphically presenting the impact of war and politics. The next one of this collection is The Baron in the Trees, once again based on a fairy tale. It is the second book of Our Ancestors trilogy. It is the story of a rebellious son of an Italian nobleman, and the son goes up into the trees, but he decides not to come down. From the age of 12, the Baron Cosimo Piavasco di Rondo. He makes his home among the trees. He walks through paths made from the branches of olive, makes his bed in holy oak, bathes in a fountain constructed from poplar bark. So his whole life is basically confined to these arboreties, these trees. Suspended among leaves the barren adventures with bandits, pirates. He also has a passionate love affair. He watches the age of enlightenment pass by beneath him. Basically, he befriends a brigand, Jean de Brugge. He is on the run from the law, and the both share this passion for book. Eventually, Jean de Brugge, he is so much lost in his book that his whole gang is dispersed and he is imprisoned. The Baron's life embodies the struggle of the intellectual to contribute meaningfully to society, though from a position of isolation and distance. Here you can see Calvino himself. With books in the trees. This tale is basically, sometimes it is said that it is a reflection of Calvino's life himself, because he was similarly affected by the war and he was also a great reader of books. The third one in this series is the Non-Existent Knight. The third book of our ancestors' collection draws on the European legends of Charles Magne and the Knights of Round Table, but the manner is once again burlesque. It is set in time of Charlemagne and it is narrated by a nun, Sister Theodora, and the Non-Existent Knight tells the story of Agiulf, a gleaming white suit of armor, but it is just an armor, there is nothing inside it. There is a challenge to his honor which sends Agiulf on a search through France, England and North Africa to confirm the chastity of a virgin whom he saved from rape years earlier. He meets a young knight named Rambo who has come to slay in battle the Saracen who killed his father. There is also an Amazon woman named Brandamante. Rambo falls in love with her, but she is in love with Agiulf. In the end, Agiulf proves the virgin innocent and he leaves his armors and disappears. We learn that Sister Theodora is actually Brandamant, and when Raimund finds about her in the convent, she runs away with him. So it is written in complete a burlesque manner, a parody of the typical round table exploits of knights. Another very categorically postmodern work of Italo Calvino is Invisible Cities, published in 1972. It is set as a conversation between Kublai Khan, the Mongol king, and Marco Polo, the traveler, in which Polo described 55 imaginary cities which he has visited in Khan's kingdom. In fact, Kublai Khan asks Marco Polo to visit his kingdom and come and return and tell him about what he has witnessed. Polo divides the cities into following categories: cities of memory, cities and desire, cities and science, thin cities, trading cities, cities and eyes, cities and names, cities and the dead, cities and the skies, continuous cities and hidden cities. He also names each city with the name of a woman, and thus a present basically gives their description in a very prosaic poetic prose manner. So once again we can say the book is neither a novel nor a prose poem, it is intermingling of these two. Now we come to the most important, most popular of his work, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. You can in fact identify from the title itself. The title is a phrase. It is one of the best known example of metafiction, because it is considered metafiction because it overturns the dominant discourses of reading. What are the discourses of reading? That there is the authority of traditional science silent and dictatorial author. The author dictates, the author decides how to run the story, and reader is a passive consumer. But this novel is nothing like this. This novel is about the art of opening the art of novel writing. Now, dear friends, basically what happens in the novel, the narrative is basically made of 10 novels within one frame story. So it's like a Chinese box novel, or novel within a novel within a novel within a novel like thing. There are multiple digressions, commentary on the novelistic form, role of the narrator, expectations of the reader. All these things are explicitly discussed in the work. The book begins with a chapter on the art and nature of reading, and this is subsequently divided into 22 chapters. The odd number chapters 1, 3, 5, 7 and the final chapter are narrated in the second person, or we can say you. So once again, it is neither first person nor the omniscient narrator, but the second person, which is not a common practice. There is a frame story, and in the frame story the protagonists are the reader, and then there is a female reader which we meet in third chapter, Ludmilla. Embedded in the frame story are 10 novel fragments. None of the novel is complete and the reader or the protagonist reads, but these all are only beginnings of the novel. The action is always broken off at a point when something, we can say at a very climax point, something important about to happen. The 10 novels or the fragments of the 10 novels, they are written in 10 different genres. There is a mystery, there is a Bildungsroman, there is realist tradition, a mock literary biography, a war romance story, political satire, Japanese narrative with eroticism and references made in haiku style. So whatever Italo Calvino can basically gather, he has make use of all these things. The very opening lines make a reader aware of what Calvino offers. These are the opening lines of the novel. You are about to begin reading Italo Calvino's new novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. Relax, concentrate, dispel every other thought, let the world around you fade, tell the others right away. No, I don't want to watch TV, raise your voice, they won't hear you otherwise. I am reading, maybe they haven't heard you, speak louder, yell. I am beginning to read Italo Calvino's new novel, or if you prefer, don't say anything, just hope they will leave you alone. This kind of opening in which the writer is drawing attention to the work itself, this is the hallmark of a metafiction novel. Now, briefly, let's go to all these works which are mentioned in this. The novel begins, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, whose writer supposedly is Italo Calvino. The reader begins it, the story of a person waiting at the station to hand over a briefcase to someone. Suddenly the reader finds that the book is basically misprinted. There are only 30 pages in it. He goes back to the bookseller, and the bookseller tells him actually he was reading Outside the Town of Melbourne, written by Tazio Bazakbal. So it is not the book by Italo Calvino, and he gives him another copy. There he also meets Ludmilla. She is also an avid reader. Once again he begins to read. Once again he realizes that there are printing mistakes, and frustrated he talks with Ludmilla, and she tells him that actually they are reading Leaning from the Steep Slope, which is written by Ukko Ahti, and who is a Sumerian writer, and they decide to meet Professor Ujji Tujji, who tell them that this is the actually novel, and he starts reading the work and also translating it. But in mid of this novel reading, one more member arrives, that is Loteria, sister of this Ludmilla, and she tells them that they are actually reading Without Fear of Wild or Vertigo, written by German writer What's Wilzandi? So once again they start reading about it, and then there is a public discussion on the role of reader and other thing. The reader or the protagonist, he basically wants to finish the story, so he goes in search of the novel and he meets the publisher Cavdana. Cavdana tells him that this all is happening because of wrong translation done by one's Ernst Marana, and he says actually it is not the novel Without Fear, but it is Looks Down in the Gathering Shadow by Bertrand van der Velde. So once again the reader takes up this book, and then he comes home once again to the Ludmila's flat, and he starts with he finds another, we can say, manuscript in the dossier of Marana, which is in a network of lines that endless. When Ludmila and they are having discussion, he also comes to realize that Marana also knows Ludmila, and when he shows Ludmila the manuscript, he finds that Marana has taken this one away and replaced it with in a network of lines that intersects. Once again, the story is interrupted when they meet Flannery, who is a writer suffering from writer's block, and he tells the reader that they are actually not about in a network of lines that intersect, but gives them a translation of a Japanese text on a carpet of leaves illuminated by moon, which is once again a soft erotic story of a young boy fallen in love with the wife and daughter of his boss. Now they are basically, he once again visits a particular country, Ataguitania, in search of the original writer. There once again meets Lotteria. They have a sex in a room in which a book, Around an Empty Grave by Calixto Bandera, is published. At the same time, when he is on the airport, he is basically imprisoned because of work written, this Japanese work, and then after his brief stint in prison, he goes on mission with the state police head Arka then Porfirich. They discuss about all this plagiarism and copying, and he hands him what story down there awaits its end. In the end, he comes to a library where he tries to find all these 10 novels. He is handed over. He asks anxious to hear the story. In this story, he come to realize that there is no ending, and he also, when he joined all the titles, he come to realize there is no end to any story. There is sudden shift to the beginning and back to the reader, along with his friend is at Calvino's book in bad reading and done away with. So it's a very, we can say, kind of meandering or kind of puzzling narrative in which the reader is continuously frustrated in his search for the ending. Okay, dear friends, that's all about Italo Calvino. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and come to know more about this great giant of postmodern literature. Keep supporting. Thank you, dear friends.